Sheila was a therapist, a wife, and a woman who was doing everything right. She ate clean, exercised daily, and followed her tapering plan as instructed. But what happened when she trusted the wrong expert to help her taper? Well, she was pushed into a cold turkey Lexapro withdrawal after 15 years of use. And what followed was physiological hell. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating, and couldn't be left alone in a room. Her nervous system had collapsed. Her husband had to shower with the door open just so she could feel safe enough not to die. And when she begged for help, the very doctor guiding her simply told her to pray it away. This is more than a story about withdrawal. It's a warning about what happens when real human suffering is dismissed in the name of holistic toughness or medical quick fixes. If you've ever felt like no one understands what you're going through, stay with us. Sheila has been there and she's made it back. I'm delighted to welcome Coach Sheila onto the podcast today. Sheila has been in the space helping as a therapist, but also someone who is intimately aware of psychiatric drug injury, and she's been connected in this community for about 10 years. And she has recently come back out of a setback, which was very demoralizing. And she's helping people again. The coaching practice is open. She's helping people with withdrawal injuries, and also those who and also trying to help people avoid getting on psychiatric medications in the first place. And she's here to share her story and her journey. So Sheila, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so great to see you and to be back in action after a hiatus. It's really good to see you and how you've grown and your, just taper clinic. And it's really awesome. I've been watching from behind the scenes.
I know, and I've missed you because, the last time we were working together was probably 3 years ago when we had some really sick clients out here in Utah, and you flew out, and we were looking after someone locally here. I was an out-of-state patient, and it was just a blast having you around. But that was a full-on time.
Yes, that was definitely an experience. I'm really glad I got to be a part of that. And I hope to, be able to do some more travel, travel in the future. So.
Okay. So, well, let's jump into it and let's unpack your story. Sheila, how did you end up on psychiatric medications to begin with?
Yeah. So it was about I'm 40, I'm going to be 43 now. So it was about age 21. So 21, I was working as a special ed teacher with relatively low functioning children with autism. And it was a really stressful environment. I loved the children. I loved what I did. I loved the kids. But, it was taxing. It was sad. At the time, I didn't realize that I was building up towards burnout. I was there for 2 years, and they had put me in the pretty behavioral classrooms, and I was having to physically having to restrain kids and things that I don't know how I did looking back. So I would come home and I would fall asleep and just be so exhausted and wiped. And then eventually I remember I just started to dread going, and I would have to really force myself. And what started as dreading going to work turned into anxiety. And I didn't realize what it was at the time. I didn't recognize it as anxiety. So I pushed forward, and, I was always sort of like a high achiever and just wanted to do the best and be the best. And so I just kept going, and eventually it spiraled into some pretty dark, severe depression where I couldn't really function. I couldn't get out of bed. I was living with my parents at the time, and I would push myself to go to work and then hide in my car and cry on my breaks and not understand what was happening. Call my mom and just be like, I don't know what's happening to me. I can't do this. And then, they didn't really know what to do for me. I come from parents that are so loving, but they also they had no idea how to emotionally support me. They were from the generation of like, suck it up and just go on with your life. And there was no emotional awareness. So they found, my mom found me a psychiatrist on recommendation from her internist. And she basically put me on the phone with this guy one day, and he said, don't you want to feel better? And I said, yes, I really do. And he said, all right, come in tomorrow. And I came in and I told him, I said, what was going on. And he didn't ask many questions. He sort of just said, okay, well, your parents are married. They're still together and you have no reason to be depressed. Which I thought, now thinking back to that statement, how horrible, right? I mean, how the lack of awareness just boggles my mind now. I never received, like so many of us, right? I never received informed consent of any kind. I was given that same old, chemical imbalance theory. But I said to him, like, are you sure this is safe? Would you put your own children on it? And he was like, oh yeah. So that line though, will just haunts me, is like, your parents aren't divorced. They're together. Like you have no reason. You have a good life. And I did have a good life in many ways, but it was just, such a horrible thing to say to someone suffering. Right. But there we were. So he wrote me a prescription for Lexapro.
And just before we go on, Sheila, I wanted to ask, okay, so you're having this crisis, work is super stressful, you're looking after these kids, the job isn't working out, burnout's happening, and you get given Lexapro. Looking back on that time, what do you think you actually needed in hindsight? How do you wish you were helped at that time?
I was also a really private person at that time with a lot of shame, internalized shame from what I now realize was, kind of CPTSD from my childhood and growing up with addiction in my family. But I didn't know knowing now, I needed someone to talk to. I needed my mom to look at me and say, let's sit down and talk about what's not working for you in your life that might, be contributing to this burnout, or something isn't in alignment that needs to, you need to change. Maybe it's another job. Maybe you're in the wrong place for you. And it's just not right. Right. Because there's always a reason. There's always a catalyst. And I had gone through a pretty devastating relationship breakup, my first real relationship, as a young person. And I had a traumatic incident go on with that. And I never processed it. So that was really the beginning. I was holding in the secret, and that I wasn't able to share it with anybody. I just wanted it to go away because I wanted to be normal, right? So that was really, I needed someone to sit with me and help me process that big thing that went on the year before I really got depressed. And so, I needed someone who could help me process all of that. But my parents, again, they didn't. We know so much more now about how important it is to express our feelings and all that. But my parents they were like, well, you have to work. We have to fix her so she can perform at work. It was just, that was how it was. So if I had someone to talk to.
Well, I mean, the thing that I think is eye-opening is, you're suffering from very normal problems, career problems, burnout, heartbreak as well. And listen, I have fairly low EQ parents, and so I know what that's like. And I think a lot of people would probably relate to that. But where things fall apart is you go and see a mental health expert, and they should be the person who instead of putting you on the medication, says, well, is there something about your relationships or your work that we need to focus on before doing this? I mean, they're meant to be the expert. They're meant to be the person that protects you from this, with their training and their network of helpers. But anyway, you end up on Lexapro. So let's go on from there. So what happens after that?
Yeah. So, I held the bottle in my hand like for so many nights, and I like instinctively just said, this just seems too easy, or like, this just doesn't seem right. But again, I was pretty dark at that point. Like, things were looking bleak. I kind of got to a point of desperation where I didn't know what to do. I have to give my mom credit. Like, she did try to have me see some psychologists here and there, but they were really, really old school. They were super like Freudian, and like, it wasn't a fit. It wasn't a fit ever. So I never wanted to go back. And anyway, held the bottle, and I rejected the idea that like, I was scared. I was really scared. This isn't going to work for me. But anyway, I got to a point where I was just so desperate. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try one. Let's see what happens. So I eventually I started, I took it for about, I guess, a week, and I didn't feel really much different. So I called the doctor, and because he didn't really give me any information about, how long this should take or whatever. He said, oh, you don't feel anything? Just double it. Because I was on 10 milligrams. And he's like, oh, just take 20. Okay. So I went up to 20, and then, slowly but surely, I did start feeling better. So I did have the experience that it was helping. And then I really became this like really good patient and advocate for meds, and trying to preach to everyone, like, don't suffer, just take this. It's great. It's amazing. It's wonderful. But, over the years, I started to lose memory. I lost chunks of time, which like I have just periods that I don't remember that I was on the meds, and I just have blocks. I started to engage in some reckless behavior, and it was different than the typical experimenting that we do when we're young. I really couldn't access my compass, like I had no sense of like right and I was really, really reckless and spontaneous, and I don't know, just not me, doing things that just weren't me. I was lucky I didn't get into more trouble than I did, but I was close at times. And I never liked being on it. So I always knew it helped, but I said, all right, I'm over this depression. Like, let me try getting off of it. I never wanted to stay on it. So I would go to my doctor and I would say, listen, I want to try getting off. Like, I think I'm all right. And he would give me the same rhetoric, cut it in half for 2 weeks. Then you could stop taking it. Of course, that didn't work. I started getting those brain zaps and just, feeling weird, and always ended up back on. I went through this like 4 times, 5 times. Once I was off for a good year and a half, and that was the longest I was off, I would say, in a 20-year stretch. But then I went back to him the last time, and he's like, you keep having these episodes, which were withdrawal, and I think you're bipolar. You must be bipolar, because the major depression, this doesn't fit, because you say you're okay and then you're really functional, but then you go down again. And, I didn't know at the time that it was withdrawal. So he tried me on, some of the mood stabilizers, which were nightmarish for my system. They didn't agree with me at all. Thankfully, those were short-lived. I think I tried 5 or 6 different ones. And thankfully, I didn't do that. I heard that my friend was on Wellbutrin with her SSRI. So I was like, oh, you know what? Let me try that. I basically just said, put me on that. And he did. And it helped for a little bit. And then I started experiencing like the emotional blunting. And it was really like my grandmother passed away, like things things happened and I couldn't express the emotion or feel the emotion associated with the event. So I started to feel like something was off. And I sort of, just was like, well, I don't like this doctor I'm working with. I'm just getting refills every few months. Like, what do I do? And my husband and I at the time, and I was a wreck. This is like, we got married. I was always so anxious, even on the meds. I was taking pieces of like benzos here and there because grad school was so hard for me. My emotions just were so unstable, and I was overstimulated all the time. And I didn't know why. So my husband and I started talking about having kids, having a family. And he was like, you've been on these meds, like, shouldn't we look into seriously getting you off of them now? And I'm like, yeah, I really want to as well. So I started a search for the best psych medication taper person in New York City. And oh, did I find her. Who I thought was the best. And I won't mention names, but I started working with a provider who claims that they specialized in medication withdrawal and tapering. And in that process of thousands of dollars, I also totally transformed my lifestyle, my diet. I learned about detoxing and, how to eat from an ancestral way, and just about the food first approach, which I'm still very big on now. So I can't totally demonize her teachings, but she led me through a taper. I got off Wellbutrin very easily, and then I got to the Lexapro. I did very well up until, and this was over a year and a half's time. So I did very well until I got to 10 milligrams. After 10 milligrams, so she had no idea about, hyperbolic. We didn't really know back then about that. So micro tapering, she was very mind over matter. She told me, you're not going to have a problem because you're really invested in coming off of this, and you want it so badly that you're not going to be one of those people who has to take years. And I was like, okay, I'm the good patient. So ironically, she was really treating me, within like the same model that my psychiatrist was. It's like, be a good patient, just listen to the rules, right? And I did. And she said, would you continue to take rat poison if you knew you were ingesting rat poison? Wouldn't you just want it out of your system? And it made sense at the time, it made sense. And I was beginning to get the cognitive symptoms. That was the first time. And I just was pushing past. So I was a cyclist. I was really, really athletic at this time. I was working out every day. I was in good shape. And I started to feel weird, like I couldn't exercise the same way. And the cognitive, the heavy brain fog started setting in, but I just kept pushing. I kept pushing. And I said, whatever, this is just part of the journey. And I would put on a brave face when I met with her, and I would be like, yeah, I'm okay. And then I got down to like 7, 6, and things started to really, really take a turn. And she had me going down 0.5 every 2 weeks. So as we know now, that's a really big jump. 0.5 every 2 weeks, right? For someone like me who has been on for 20, at the time, 15, 16 years or whatever. And I started getting this like tremor, inner tremors, which I still deal with this, but it's something I've learned to live with. But just a lot of signs of destabilization. And then the anxiety started, but not just anxiety, like pure terror, internal agitation, mental agitation. My mind just would race and race and race. I stopped being able to eat. I stopped being able to sleep. My digestion was a wreck. I was in full-blown panic mode 24/7. And she would give me all these like holistic remedies and nothing worked, or it would like help for a minute and then it wouldn't work. And so, you know, we were calling emergency appointments at this point over and over. And she was just like, you know, you got to get into the driver's seat. You're in charge now, not your inner child. You need to mentally really just, you know, want this and be with it. And I was trying to explain, like, you don't understand, like I don't feel like I'm going to make it. I can't just keep going like this. I can't keep staying like this. And so for the folks that understand akathisia, I descended into really, really intense akathisia. Like I couldn't stop moving, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I was like 100 pounds and my like solid, I'm like 150 is like my good weight when I'm really building muscle. And I was like, I looked so ill. I couldn't go out, but I also couldn't sit still. My husband, like I had to sit in the room with him while he showered because I couldn't even be in a room alone. I just couldn't get myself to settle. And you only know if you know what this feels like. It's just like you wish for death because it's pure torture. It's pure hell, akathisia. And it doesn't happen to everyone. And we still don't know why it happens to some and not others. But it happened to me and it was not getting better. And at some point I told her, I said, I think I need to be hospitalized. I can't go on like this. I'm going to end my life. And I don't want to do that to my family. I can't do that to my sister, my husband, you know, but really my sister, like I just kept thinking of her and how she was still young and like, it would destroy her life. And I said, I need a hospital because at this point, it's that bad. Like, do I want meds? Do I want to be near any doctor with psych meds? No, but I am desperate. And so when I told her this, she like basically dropped me. She just, as a patient, she's like, you are looking for something that I don't prescribe meds and you're looking for something I can't help you with. I'm going to pass you over to your nurse, at the time, my therapist is also a nurse practitioner. She's like, I'm going to pass you off to her because I know she prescribes. She didn't know what to do with me. She had no idea. She would tell me like, oh, you chose this, so you have to sort of go through it. And I said, but you don't understand. And I didn't know what akathisia was at the time. I didn't know the word. But so anyway, she couldn't help me. I have a very, very close family friend who I work with, their son with autism for 17 years. And she took charge and said, we need to get her into a place now because she's not going to live. And she and Ryan, my husband, they, got together and they found somewhere for me to go. And I went. And like 2 days later, they were like, there's a bed. And I was fully going in, preparing to die. I said, you can't medicate someone as destabilized as this. I've read the horror stories. You can't do it. It's going to get worse.
So that's an interesting point, Sheila. When did you understand that you actually had a protracted withdrawal injury, in this whole process?
When the akathisia got to the point where like I stopped being able to hold food down or, sleep at all. But the akathisia really, I felt like I had someone screaming inside my head. It was when the akathisia got to I forgot this whole part. When I got to like 5 milligrams, she told me just jump off. That's when it became really bad. She advised me, she gave me the rat poison theory, and she's like, you might as well just cold turkey. Here's a prayer. Here's an affirmation, whatever thing you can say to your final dose. Like just say it and burn it and just this is the end. This is the beginning of my healing. Like And so I did it. And I descended into like that was when I knew that this was just beyond, me adjusting to not being on the meds anymore, that it was more of an injury, and I had gone way too fast.
Okay. So I mean, imagine you must have found surviving antidepressants like during that time. Yeah,
that was about 2019. Yeah. And I found Robert Whittaker, and I found surviving antidepressants and Laura, and, Inner Compass, and all of the big Peter Bregan. And, I started just reading, and I was like, oh crap. I was like, this is much more than I thought. And I met, some other people in the community, and I would just watch Laura's videos like over and over and just say like, oh, I'm going to come out of this. Until I got to the point where it was me sitting with the bottle of liquid Lexapro, and I was really considering just like drinking the whole thing. And I was like, I'm not going to live. I know I hit my ceiling, and I'm pretty strong. Like, I'm from New York. I've been through a lot of shit. This wasn't livable. So I agreed to go into the hospital, and that was in the summer of 2019. Mm-hmm. And went in not feeling good. I sat in a room full of practicing, full of med students and psychiatrists, and told them my story. I told them I was in severe withdrawal from Lexapro, and they basically diagnosed me with psychotic features. They told me I was psychotic for saying I was in withdrawal. They said that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And that I was telling stories of these online communities and these support networks that weren't real. And nobody goes through this. And I was psychotic for telling them I was in withdrawal. So that was traumatic, to say the least. But then on the other hand, I was there 10 days, and they did give me, they gave me Zyprexa, an antipsychotic. They gave me Ativan. And they switched me from Lexapro to Zoloft. And it's a little bit of a blur still, but I did end up stabilizing. And this is what causes me a lot of inner turmoil still to this day, is like, the medication that nearly killed me, but then also saved my life. And it really did. Whatever the effect that it had to calm my system, it really did. It stopped the akathisia. And now I'm really careful not to, talk about this as a prescription or a cure for people to try, because obviously, you and I know, we try not to use medications to mitigate withdrawal, but we're also different. And just because it worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So I say this with a lot of caution, but it did work for me, and I'm so grateful, because I know I wasn't going to be alive. Mm-hmm. So I and the doctor, to his credit, and this is in my practice, I am very big on non-dogmatic approach. I think we've lost respect for medicine and science for some reason over the last 10 years, and it's a whole other podcast we could do, but I have to give him credit in that, yes, he misdiagnosed me. He didn't understand withdrawal, but he did tell me that this would be a 3-month temporary thing, and it was. I got off of those two, the antipsychotic and the Ativan, very easily in 3 months. I was stable. I was now on Zoloft, high dose. And then I started weaning myself down off that, because at that time I was like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm getting myself off this stuff once and for all. I started in 2020. I was going down on the Zoloft. I had no side effects. I had no symptoms of withdrawal. I started building my practice. I started working with Inner Compass. I started to really build my life back. Now, mind you, at this point, our marriage was in total distress. We were financially in distress. But I started working again. I started being able to function. I started seeing withdrawal people again. And I stopped my tapering of Zoloft at 12.5 milligrams. Now, why did I not finish? That's a good question. I was so traumatized from my experience, and I was feeling so well. I just couldn't go there again. I couldn't go down lower because 25 milligrams is the smallest pill that you can get without a compounding pharmacy. And so I would just cut it in half, and that was where I landed. And I stayed on 12 and a half milligrams for like 2 years, which again is not, not always advisable to stay on such a low dose for so long. I mean, I was so scared and just wanted to live my life. So I did. Looking back, do I wish I just went through with it? Yeah, but I didn't. So there we were. I was going through my life. COVID happened. The pandemic started. It was great for me because I was working from home. I had clients, all day. I had a wait list. And this was I was working for someone else at the time. And then I was, trying to avoid COVID, I finally got it in the winter of 2022, and everything fell apart. I had a really minor infection, like a normal, whatever. It was like a light flu. And then I started to experience really weird cognitive changes. Like I never had to take notes. Like I have a good memory when it comes to people. So if we talk about something, I won't forget it. And so that was helpful with being a therapist. I forgot my clients. I forgot who they were. Like I literally forgot their stories. And I was just shell-shocked. I was like, what is going on? I made the same smoothie every morning for years. I forgot how to make it. I had to relearn every day how to do simple things. My brain stopped functioning. I stopped being able to sleep. I would get crazy mood swings, out of nowhere. I would start screaming and crying and just like this for no reason. I couldn't be around my family. I was just triggered by everything. I lost all sensations of hunger that's still not 100% resolved. I have very strange hunger signal issues. I think, my leptin is probably really messed up. Hormonally, I got really messed up. My thyroid got messed up. But it was eerily similar, some of the ways I felt to withdrawal. Eerily similar. So,
and
what
I want to just jump in here and add, Sheila, is that I've seen this happen so many times since COVID that we have patients who have protracted injuries or they've had them in the past and recovered, and then they have either they get the vaccine or they actually get COVID, and it causes a flare in their symptoms. And I've seen setbacks last from 12 months to 18 months sometimes. And so there does appear to be something about COVID that it's almost like a second hit to the nervous system. And if you're already brittle because you've been hurt, it can really derail things. And so what I want to ask listeners to do, if you're listening to this, if this happened to you or someone that you knew who's gone through withdrawal and it made things worse, could you leave a comment below this video and just describe what happened to them and how long it lasted? Because I suspect this is probably quite common.
Yes. And, from talking to people in the community, I then learned that it was common, and people would get the flu, or people would go in for a dental surgery or an operation and they would have huge setbacks. But, we knew so little about COVID at the time. I mean, we still don't know that much, but no one knew how to help me, first of all. So how did I go from near death with this withdrawal with Lexapro to this? And I had to stop working. We were already financially ruined. I was like, this is not my marriage again. I'm like, he can't do this again. He was traumatized too. It was really, really hard. And now, so this neuroinflammation, I don't know what to call it, but I passed a year and a half. This wasn't getting better. I was hanging on, but like I was starting to lose hope pretty quickly, and I just went dark. I like quit all of my obligations. I stopped seeing people. I was really not well, and it was getting to me emotionally in a way that like I remembered feeling, when I was very depressed in the past. Um, and this I think is important to touch on, because like withdrawal, I found myself in a very bizarre position, having to teach the people around me how to support me. Nobody knew, again, because we didn't know about COVID. There was nothing to call what I had. Like, we didn't even use the word long COVID at the time, really. It was starting, but nobody knew a doctor that could help me. Nobody knew what I can do. Nobody, to have to teach someone while you're going through something so awful, it was definitely the hardest thing I've ever had to do. At least in withdrawal, I knew it was from the drug, but I had no idea like what to say about this. And my family was like, we don't know what to do. I had to like tell other people how they could be supportive to me. I almost had to like carry and calm their worries and their fears and reassure them that I would get through it, when I had no idea if I was going to get better. And it was a very strange and unfair position to be in when you're the one suffering. I lost friends. People really abandoned me, not to be like victim-y, but it's just the reality. Like, people don't know how to be with the unknown suffering, medical stuff, or whatever you want to call it. So that was an interesting, thing to have to do. People don't give you a parade. People don't there are no walks in your honor. There are no fundraisers, because like withdrawal, this had no name, right? It wasn't cancer. And my mom got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer during COVID. And so this part was really strange, because I couldn't be there for her. I couldn't support her because of how cognitively messed up I was. And that's heartbreaking, but it was just strange, because, people with cancer get the support, and people with these lesser known things that we suffer from, we don't. And this was the second time that I had this, unknown, withdrawal is known, but it was just really weird to have to like kind of rally the people and teach them. I just need you to be there. I just need you to listen. I'm not asking you to help fix me. Just come over, sit with me. People just, I don't know. I guess they're scared. They're scared when they can't fix. And we know that about people, but that was a really hard pill to swallow. So, how did I start getting better? It was almost 2 years, and I was really desperate. And so a friend introduced me to, because at this point I was trying supplements, I was trying whatever I could try, the ketogenic diet. And she was like, you might feel worse before you feel better. Just stay with it, stick with it. And she helped me. And eventually I said, I taught my body how to shift into fat burning. Eventually I started, like, the cognitive stuff started lifting a little bit, and my mood started feeling really stable. And I was like, there's something in this for me. Something here is working. So I carried on with that for about 3 months, and I thought that I was healing. I thought I was like, this was it. This was the fix. And it really did. It brought me from like 10%, I'd say, to like a 60% maybe. And I did it for 3 months, but then I started having a lot more, like neurological, like bodily, I don't know. It felt like it might be too harsh, on my physical body. And so I stopped, staying in ketosis, and I went back to just eating clean, not processed, whatever. But then, man, the depression, it started getting worse and worse. I started talking to more and more people who were like, this is withdrawal, like you're in withdrawal, like you've kicked it off. And it started really messing with me. And I got really the most anxious like I've ever been. I couldn't function. I was in, I mean, you spoke to me during that time. I was like, it was like withdrawal. I mean, I was in total just fear and looping. And I couldn't get myself to calm down because I felt like I was between a rock and a hard place with no way to go. I was too terrified to taper the 12.5 milligrams. And, I didn't know what else to do. And the last resort, somebody suggested that I try increasing the Zoloft because there was some research about SSRIs and like the neurotransmitters in the gut getting disrupted with COVID, and who the hell knows. But I was, again, I was at this point of desperation. So I used Ativan again, like I did, in 2019, because I knew that I responded okay to that and it didn't make me worse. I used that to transition to titrate me up, and I got better. And, it's just hard to talk about because like sometimes I feel like I'll never fully get off these meds, and like, it's just hard because so many of my withdrawal friends like had successful tapers and are just in the healing, phase. And I feel like I can't get away from them. And I feel trapped sometimes. And I can't harp on it because I'm living my life and I'm well, and that's what I have to focus on. But I never thought I'd be, on like a full dose again. I mean, I'm not, but I'm much higher than 12 and a half. And little by little, everything started to clear up, and I started to sleep. I started to eat better. I had more mental clarity. I started thinking about going back to work. I started wanting to go out and socialize, and I could walk. I had stamina again. I'm guessing that COVID it really disrupted my homeostasis, where that 12.5 milligrams maybe was holding me, and it maybe just disrupted that and sent me into a withdrawal state. That was, kind of the hypothesis my taper friends withdrawal friends were coming to also. And, I was okay. And I've just been holding on a dose, and I don't know when I'll taper. I will not die on these medications, but I'm not tapering anytime soon because I have to work. I have to contribute to my family. I have a mother who is sick, and I want to be there with her and to spend time with her for as long as she has left. And so, I went into grief. Grief is my specialty in therapy. And, that's because grief is the language of withdrawal. Grief is the language of withdrawal. We fight these silent battles of loss, of what regular people that don't go through this don't ever have to face. We miss normal milestones. We miss the ability to have children, which is, I think, the most criminal part of this whole thing. So I decided that, I couldn't stew in the victim, poor me, which we're not, right? We're rightfully angry. We're rightfully wanting to shout it from the rooftops. And I had my days doing that for sure. But, I decided that when I was able to go back, I was going to go into grief in all forms. So I see a lot of people, who have been affected by meds and withdrawal. And I'm really glad to be going back to coaching now, so that I can help people grieve the losses that are associated with this crazy, crazy, torturous journey, you know. So that really inspired me, was my experience to specialize in this grief.
And what I guess what I would add there,
that's where I am now.
Yeah. It's not bad to just stay on the medications and kind of just let them sit where they are, you know, especially if you've had an experience like yours and you've noticed that you're stable. You know, Chris has been on the channel multiple times. He talks about, I think he's on an antidepressant and a low dose of an antipsychotic, and he's tapering at a minuscule amount, like well below 5% a month, like nothing. And he's pretty much said, you know, if this just takes me another 5 or 6 years, he just micro tapers. It's just something he does in the background, and he just enjoys being functional because he has a family now, and that's really important to him. And so there's no hard and fast rules about how to do this. I know if people listen to my content, they know that we frequently don't advise people to get back on medications after they've had withdrawal injuries. And that's because we see that it sometimes can make things worse, but there's an exception to the rule always. And, you know, we're hearing one now where higher doses, you know, additional medications, even things people would never think of, you know, antipsychotics, benzodiazepines, actually stabilized you, and you were able to get off them in a short while afterwards. And I think it just speaks to how complicated this is. And it's also hard as well. I mean, once you know, how much of it's the meds, how much of it is time, you know, how much of it is waves and windows. You know, I find myself kind of with all of my patients juggling all of these different things, trying to decipher, you know, why they're feeling so bad at this moment. But that might be another thing I'll ask people. In the comments below, when you had a setback or when you were in a really bad wave and did you get prescribed additional medications? Did they help you? Did they harm you? I'd like to hear both stories there. So please comment below and let us know what happened. And I guess what I want to, well, you know, Sheila, what we should do now is I'd like you to share with the audience how they can get in touch with you if someone's interested in your withdrawal support coaching, or they want support so they don't need to get on medications to begin with. How can they find you?
Yeah, so I just launched my website, and you can find me at wolfpackcounseling.com. wolfpackcounseling.com. And if you want to directly message me, you can email me at sheila@wolfpackcounseling.com, and that's my direct contact. I am selective with who I take for withdrawal. I will send you a questionnaire, and you just, you know, fill it out, and I will, you know, I see if we're a good fit, and we have an initial conversation for free before, you know, working together. But yeah, you can contact me right through the website or directly at we're still working on a few things. So Sheila at Wolfpack Counseling is the best email for me.
Okay. Now, Sheila, is there anything that I didn't ask you about which you want to share with the audience before we wrap?
Well, we talked a little bit about, you know, and this is just some thoughts on some underserved populations in the withdrawal space that I think, you know, it would be wise to focus on, which are, you know, children with autism who I also work with and see a lot of polydrugging, getting to the parents, getting to the schools administrations. We have a major problem or in New York anyway, with schools coming to parents and families and basically threatening them that that if they don't medicate their children who aren't behaving or conforming or, behaving the way that they want, that they'll lose their spot in the school. And I've gone through this with over 10 families, and, their children end up being medicated to the gills and they can't speak for themselves. So what are we doing to help the people who don't have voices, or the lower functioning people who can't understand informed consent? They don't know what's going on with them. They're just being put on. And, so we have to get to the admin. We have to get to the parents. We have to do better at educating before, people are in these positions. And also with veterans. Veterans are another underserved population who become very sick by all these, they get medication piled on and there's just not enough support. So those are some areas I'm going to address in my practice too. I work with a lot of autism, a lot of families. So hopefully I'll be able to do something there. And I'm waiting for you, Josef, to open our withdrawal center. That's my long-term goal. We need places where people can go long-term and be taken care of when they're in the throes of this.
I talk about it every week with my wife, and we're both on board with it, because as much as I like remote work, I miss people, and I miss just casual encounters with folks. And this is such a business way of looking at it. A withdrawal center is not a very profitable business, which is like a terrible thing to say, because I know it's needed. The margins are a lot smaller. It's a lot more intensive. You need real estate, but for the soul, and because I would live there, if I ran it, I'd bring my family there, and I think it would just make me a lot happier to be around a team of people and actually see people in person. Yeah. And so it's a very high priority.
You'd be
for
surprised.
Us.
There are a lot of people who are older who have been through this that would help and would join the efforts for, minimal compensation. And I think in the future, when you're ready, I think it's possible, and it'll be needed. This community has lost a lot. We've lost a lot of good people, and we continue to lose people. There's a lot of tragedy, but there's also been remarkable comeback stories. You know them, you talk to them every day, of hope. We need more healing stories, more people that have reinvented themselves. We just need to highlight those and keep showing people that they just have to hang on, no matter how bad the torture is, that they will heal. It just takes different amounts of time. Nothing's permanent. Things always shift. We're not sick. We're not, we have to come back into balance. We always tend to think our situations are like worse than other people, and we'll be the exception. There's no exceptions. And that's really what I want to leave people with. And I just have to congratulate you, Josef, because, your growth just since you got started up, and I was fortunate enough to be part of it in the beginning, and it's just the people you're helping. It's truly remarkable. So just want to say thank you. To go up against the powers that be is no small thing. So keep fighting the good fight.
It's interesting. I came along. Yeah, I've been in this for about 2018, I would say. But then I think about the people before me. I think about Nick, who's been here for probably nearly 15 years, and all these other folks.
Yeah, she's kept me alive. She's kept so many people alive.
Chris Page and all of that. And I look at the collective efforts of all these people who have just been whittling away at this issue. And I mean, it was an agenda item in the executive order at the start of the year. I just saw that there's a antidepressant awareness nonprofit that's submitting a citizen's petition, I think, to get protracted withdrawal in the label. There's just, there's all of these little streams converging into a big river. And I think, I really think it's going to change the way psychiatry is practiced. I think the tipping point has happened. We've got 20% of people on these drugs, everyone knows someone personally who's been on them, and they can just see it's not working. You know, these aren't great long-term solutions.
People don't want them anymore.
Yeah.
People know better now. They know to avoid. Even on TikTok, you can see it. Like people, I mean, the general consensus, the younger people, a lot of them are like, no, I'll try anything else. A lot of them.
Yeah.
It's changing. It's changing.
Yeah. All right. Well, great to have you here, Sheila. Great to have you back with us, and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, Josef.
If Sheila's story hit home and you want to hear what healing can look like years down the road, I highly recommend watching my conversation with Brooke CM. She was put on antidepressants as a teenager and thought she'd be on them for life. But after withdrawal, grief, and a total loss of identity, she found a way back. Click here to watch it now.